Excellent.
Well, thank you for joining us. You'll see from the kind of stated agenda in your program today, we've had a slight change of plan, dynamically adjusting the agenda today to talk about something slightly differently. We just have a customer come in and join us to talk about the journey that they've been on with DigiHaul, but we've adapted a little on the fly, and given DHL and DigiHaul's really close working relationship, given looking at the rest of the agenda for today as well, really, no one's really been talking about the topic of decarbonisation, obviously such a critical topic for all of us and something that every business is facing into. So we will cover that today over the course of the time that we have together, and please feel free to interact at any opportunity you wish. It seems quite informal now, more than a presentation, a definite fireside chat.
Absolutely,
is how it feels. So we'll do some intros, if that's okay. Mike, do you want to lead us off?
I will indeed. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Watkins. I'm the MD of the DigiHaul business in the UK. I've only been with the business for 6 months. 6 months next week, actually. Really enjoying it. Great business, and I was really pleased to have joined. And prior to that, the majority of my career was in a combination of in-house roles with retailers and third-party logistics providers. So good to see you all today.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Ben?
Yeah, hi. My name is Ben Burns. I'm part of the fleet decarbonisation team in the UK. We're a small team, but as you'd imagine, we kind of touch all areas of deployment of clean fuels, speaking to customers on a regular basis, internal stakeholder management. We look to post-deployment, really make sure it's a seamless transfer as well. Been with the company about 10 years now, for my sins in procurement before this. So, yeah, happy to talk about anything decarbonisation.
Thank you very much, Ben. And my name is Phil Yates. I'm the VP of Business Development in our network transport business in the UK, but I also wear a second hat in terms of being the Go Green lead for our transport sales BU as well. So trying to drive the uptake and provision of transport decarbonisation solutions to our customers. So a topic that's quite close to my heart today as well. So, Mike, I'll start with you if that's okay. Can you tell us a little bit more, for those that haven't found their way to either a one-to-one or to the stall today? Tell us a little bit more about the DigiHaul business, if you don't mind, please, and the role it plays in the freight market.
Absolutely. So at DigiHaul, for those of you that don't know, Phil mentioned earlier that we had a really close working relationship with DHL. Well, we are actually part of the DHL group of companies. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of the DHL business. DigiHaul was set up about 5 years ago, and it was what was termed an accelerated growth solution. So it's one of the areas where DHL focus on specific problems in the marketplace, and they invest in businesses and solutions to solve those problems. So the reason behind DigiHaul being set up and existing was that it's a digital freight platform, and we are now the leading digital freight platform in the UK. So there are many digital freight platforms out there, but where we are different and where we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace is we don't just provide the technical capability, we don't just provide the web platform and the visibility that provides, but we also team that up with industry expertise. So we have a team who know the haulage market, they know customers, they know the retail market, and our business is based around a sort of end-to-end ownership of that subcontraction model, providing flexibility for our customers. So we focus on the procurement side of things. So we have a procurement team that selects the best hauliers to work with. We have a compliance team who make sure that those hauliers have all the right legislation requirements filled in, they have the right certification, the right documentation. So that gives peace of mind to our customers as well, knowing that they are working with reputable hauliers and they have that coverage. So we are an international business as well. So we're operating in 6 countries across the world at the moment. 2 key operating businesses. There's the UK and Mexico. We currently have about 200 employees across the globe, and we managed in excess of 200,000 shipments per year through the platform. So that's it. We focus largely on road freight rather than sea freight or ocean freight, but that's a technical capability that we have where we link in with the broader elements of the DHL business, such as the DHL Global Freight business, for example. It's a bit of a one-stop shop.
Okay.
And our role is really to modernise the haulage industry. It's quite traditionally still done on bits of paper. There's a lot of manual planning. There's a lot of paper PODs. Our job is to simplify and digitalise that supply chain journey.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Good summary. So, Ben, obviously, subcontraction and the digital freight market plays a key role in clearly in any transport solution. With decarbonisation in mind, could you tell us a little bit about the approach that DHL's taking to update and modernise its fleet to face into kind of the challenges that we're all dealing with here?
Yeah, absolutely. So my side is more our own fleet rather than our scope 3 and our subcontracted fleet. But importantly, we've been at this for some time already. We're not starting now. Our internal department for decarbonisation, our Go Green team, was founded in 2008. So it's actually 18th birthday this year. So you can imagine that run up to now, what we've managed to achieve to put ourselves in a position now to really make those steps for decarbing and putting clean fuels out there. But really, it's our acknowledgement that there's no silver bullet approach to or fuel to decarbonise. We're not picking just one solution. We're using all of the available options to us, whether it be HVO, where we're putting 20 million litres a year through our fleet. We've got 250 plus biomethane vehicles across both bio-LNG and bio-CNG, and also a rather modest electric fleet at the moment, but ever growing and starting off with vans that will go further as well. We need this kind of like robust balance to our fleet because there's different benefits and challenges to each of the different fuels. We run a predominantly very heavy fleet, so that limits some of the other options. So bio-LNG, for example, is key there. Whereas with some of the lighter options in our fleet, we can use other fuels for either immediate effect or for cost competitiveness as well. We also see that although we know zero emission fuels is the future, there is a bridge, a long transition to be able to do so. And with death of diesel dates, OEMs having zero emission sales only on fleet in the future, 2035, 2040, those transition fuels, those low emission fuels are going to carry us right the way through to there and beyond with legacy fleets. So it's really important that we focus in these areas, make those savings while we can for our short-term targets, while growing our understanding for electrifying our fleet as well, understanding what demand we have, how we transition our business and our duty cycles of our vehicles to fit those appropriately for the future. So we're doing a bit of everything, and that's a question I could answer over a course of an hour. So any questions at the end that are more specific, I'd love to answer. But
so investment in technology, investment in the right fuels,
in the infrastructure as well, and growing each space appropriately within different areas of our business. And it's an important point as well, with each customer, with each site, with each part of our network. That, again, there shouldn't be just one solution. We're using all of the available ones simultaneously. Sometimes from the same site with the same customer, we'll have CNG fleet for the low weight tractors. For the heavy weight tractors, we'll have LNG, and then HVO for the remaining fleet. Now, so in certain situations, we can go a completely low carbon fleet now in the right scenario.
In the right situation.
So which is the strength of using all of these options available to us.
Which solves the challenge, I suppose, of own fleet operations. But we know, as we said earlier, that any transport operations or most transport operations won't be a core fleet only. Most will be some kind of combination, certainly in the heavy haulage industries. And Mike, we know that the lowest carbon mile is the one that's not driven at all. So how is DigiHaul being used to help optimize those other lanes and other routes?
Well, I can talk to a couple of specific examples where we have implemented solutions which have really taken miles off the road in exactly that point. So the first one is with Marks & Spencer. So we've been working with Marks & Spencer for a long time as a business, and we have been able to work with them and look at their entire network and say, well, actually, do you need to have the same amount of core fleet that you have today? So actually, they've been able to reduce their assets by us tactically looking at which routes are better placed to be one-way trips or better placed to be where we can facilitate round trips between two hauliers. And that's allowed them to reduce assets, reduce the reliance on the amount of core fleet they've got, their ability then to deploy their capital elsewhere within their business, and also reduce the carbon burden on those one-way trips. Because a traditional retail model, you go out to store, you come back. Generally, you've got a few trays on it or a few cages or what have you. We've been able to provide an alternative to that, and we've taken about 30% of the road miles off the road in that example. The next example is Suntory, who are a huge manufacturer. They own the Lucozade and the Ribena brands and the production in a couple of facilities, and we manage the factory gate clearance for those operations. So again, we worked in partnership with DHL, actually. And we did a full network analysis of exactly those types of questions around what could be one-way trip, what could be round trip. And we worked with Suntory and came up with a solution to exactly move to 70% core fleet, 30% subcontract, excuse me. Getting over a cold. So that's another example where we've worked with those customers to reduce miles and absolutely reduce carbon as a result.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And if we think then about the capture of Scope 3 emissions, which has been a challenge for a long time for most organisations, certainly where we've got subcontraction partners in place, does the DigiHaul platform and have functionality to support businesses with the capture of for KPIs for carbon emissions as well as operational KPIs?
Absolutely. So it's something that's been built into the fundamental capability of the platform. Is that when we accept a job and when we work with a haulier on that job, we get the access to the vehicle registration. We understand the weight of the load. We understand the route that it's going to take. All that information is plumbed into the system. And we have a calculation that's been built by our data team in the background that consolidates all that information and can provide that as a consolidated Scope 3 report to our customers of the actual carbon footprint of those loads. So again, it's a completely digital solution. It takes away from the challenge where customers who are working with multiple hauliers are getting on bits of paper or getting in different formats or Excel spreadsheet. What they get is one carbon report. There's also the ability for the data to be analysed by our insights team, and we've got a specific team who focus on understanding what the data are telling us, and we work very closely with customers as well to identify opportunities to reduce miles, carbon, or cost further through greater efficiency. So that's all the capability that's built into the platform.
Okay. And that stands up to audit from customers, kind of organisations from a sustainability point of view?
It does. Again, take the M&S example. So the Plan A agenda is front and centre, and the information is submitted as part of their annual carbon reports.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Mark. So, Ben, we've spoken quite a bit so far about the challenges that road transport offers from a decarbonisation perspective. What are some of the other infrastructure challenges that we need to face into if we're going to get closer to the decarbonisation targets that we've set?
So I get to spend a lot of my time talking about challenges, which is great. There's solutions to follow, hopefully. But with infrastructure, and then specifically looking at as we transition to an electric fleet as well, we're going to see property and transportation much more intertwined than ever before. This is generally down to power requirement, but there's a couple of different views on this. And if I remember my stats correctly, if we zoom out to a country level, DHL UK operates around 6,000 plus HGVs across all of our different entities. To electrify that entire fleet, that would take approximately 450 plus megawatts of continuous power. It's just a big number. It doesn't mean anything until somebody explained it to me that that's 37% of Heysham-2 nuclear power plant at any given moment. The UK's largest nuclear power plant. That's a substantial amount of power when we are 3% of the sector. That's not 3% of the power requirement of the country, just our sector. So there's a wider picture here in terms of power availability. In an arena when we're trying to make the grid green alongside it, so we're actually lowering the power availability in some ways. So that's like the wider picture. It's not just a DHL problem or a sector problem, that's a countrywide issue we're going to all have to lean into together. But when we take that back to site, that's also important because power generation, especially new power generation, is coming from offshore wind, which is quite a long way away from where it's actually needed. When we talk to government and we sort of see about what the plans are going to be, their suggestions are, well, take it to where the power is generated. But as we know, we can't have depots along the coastline. They're there for a specific reason. So getting access to power, paying for that power and upgrading facilities to enable an electric fleet is going to be significant. We've got a long time to solve these problems together, but that's going to be a major challenge. Beyond enabling power at site as well, our site's going to be fit for the future generally. We have to measure what demand is going to be needed if the power is available. There's also other softer areas that need to be looked at. For decades, we've been making warehouses bigger and yards smaller. It's just been the trend to maximise the value we get from our properties. Whereas now we actually need quite large sites. We need to be able to charge and park trucks more often for longer periods of time. Are the roofs ready for PV? So we can maximise self-generation to mitigate those challenges with the power needed. So there's a lot of these side of things to look at, but they all come from looking at demand, enabling our buildings in the best way possible, and starting relatively small. There's no point in going in a big bang with this. We have to start making that transition now. There's a level of understanding as we make that transition, because there's inevitably going to be some operational changes required. Duty cycles of vehicles may change. There's wilder plans that we may have to decouple some yards from warehouses. And what does that mean for our operations as well? So big challenges. There's lots of people looking at solutions. I think there's going to be some really good ones that come in line with differing what we do. But as I say, it's starting small, making sure we're learning now to enable that change, really.
So some big challenges to face into there. And if we look at 2050B, it's not that far away, is it really? It's probably only three or four vehicle kind of buying cycles, or
Absolutely.
in terms of the way we would buy and lease kit. What's the strategy to get us there in terms of sustainable fuels? You talked a little bit about gas and HVO earlier on, but given that the government is already rowing back on some of its car electric commitments, do we really think that by 2050 we're going to be ready for electric truck fleets?
Well, I think we're going to have to be ready. That's the real challenge. By 2035, or from 2035, all vehicle sales will have to be zero emission, up to 26 tonnes. So that's all of your rigid fleets. They'll have to be zero emission, sorry. There will be, I'm sure hydrogen will play a part of it, but zero emission from 2035. And then from 2040, all HGVs will be zero emission sales. So we'll have to be ready at that point. As some of the challenges I mentioned earlier is why the sustainable fuels are so important to us, and there'll be a legacy fleet of all, including diesel, beyond those dates. But you can imagine we're going to have to be relatively ready by that point as a sector, as a country, as a continent as well. So the closer we get to those dates, the more we'll start to see carbon costs creep in to mitigate those changing costs. But we're going to have to be ready. First step is understanding true demand for power. What vehicles are feasible to transition to EV now? What changes would you need to make to expedite those in the future? What additional infrastructure is going to be needed? It's a level of understanding, a journey of understanding that's going to need to be going on. Whereas with some of the sustainable fuels, we've been working with them for so long, we're ready to go instantly. With the EVs, it's going to be a slightly longer journey. I'm sure the OEMs wouldn't like me saying that too much, but I think the general understanding is coming back more around from pushing the sales of these to get them in the right places for the long term as well. So I think managing that's absolutely critical moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And given the challenges that exist doing that when you own the fleet and you've got control of it and it's your fleet, how do you see that playing into the subcontraction market, where you've got potentially thousands of hauliers who are maybe don't have the capital, or are not necessarily working on finer margins? How do you see them responding to some of these challenges?
I think that is a real challenge for those hauliers, where they not necessarily have the reserves of cash and the available capital that the big businesses do have. I think there's going to have to be a combination of things. I think the government are going to have to support with the right incentives, with the right grants, etc., to make this happen. Those businesses are going to have to make long-term investments as well. And I think one of the things that we are exploring at the moment as a DigiHaul business is how we can take a bit more of a stewardship role on that within the industry, and actually be able to use some of the strength of the DHL business and some of the innovations that we've taken in terms of alternative fuel. Maybe it's given access to the hauliers to those alternative fuel networks to allow them to be able to phase an increase in the amount of sustainable fleet that they have. But yeah, it's not going to be a quick fix. It's not an easy answer for those hauliers.
And when we see hauliers kind of going, to the wall on a weekly basis as a result of some of the cost pressures of operating just today on a diesel fleet, never mind the changes that are required in this space. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. I think it's a very, very tough market for those hauliers. I think we're going to see greater consolidation within the haulier market as well. I think we're going to see a lot more change within that environment to meet these requirements.
Really, you see a more of a transition to a more owned fleet, or a rationalisation of the supplier base?
No, I mean, in terms of the haulier base, I think we'll see more consolidation in the haulier market. Therefore, they will have better buying power themselves to be able to fund these initiatives. So,
Okay.
but I think the one thing I will say is that I think collaboration is key. I think it's not going to be running with the same operating model that we run today. I think the country and indeed the global freight market is going to have to change. There's going to have to be an open mindset to collaboration between suppliers, between customers, between the hauliers. I think there's going to have to be a change in mindset for everybody to work together to truly be able to unlock the opportunities that are going to be enable the targets for 2050. It's going to require a huge change.
Yeah, I agree. I think even an exceptional transport fleet that's been run really, really well will only at best have somewhere between 35 and 50% utilisation because of empty fleet running and because of shift requirements and things like that as well, and customer requirements don't deliver overnight. So we've got an awful lot of fleet stood, and we've got an awful lot of still got empty miles on the road. So yeah, collaboration is key. Okay, thank you very much, gents. Appreciate your expert opinions and input. I'd like to throw it open to the room really to see if there are any questions for any of us around this particular topic. Hi, Sue. Essential, that might.
The ones at the back. Yeah. Do you think there's going to be another type of fuel that almost overtakes the race to become electric?
In terms of zero emission fuels, I see electric as being the key fuel. Anything can happen between now and then. Hydrogen's often mooted as an alternative, but I've got many arguments against hydrogen. One being the cost of producing hydrogen is so significant. I don't see how it can ever get down to a level where it's at cost parity with electric, let alone diesel. Even with all of the subsidies in the world, it's going to be a significant ask. There's also many industries that require hydrogen, such as in agriculture and manufacturing. They are the perfect avenues for green hydrogen to go to. It'd make a lot more sense if we could convert those with electrolysis hydrogen now, rather than in zero emission transportation. However, I think there are definitely going to be sectors and avenues where electrification doesn't work. Whether I've talked about the challenges with power availability and accessibility. There's undoubtedly going to be infrastructure deserts where maybe hydrogen is perfect for. Another sector such as ports, I already believe it's very strong. Mining, things like that. Hydrogen will grow in pockets. How far it grows into normality, into transportation, I'm not sure. And then beyond, we're all fixated with 2050. What happens 20, 30 years after that? Who knows? We could be producing so much electricity, we don't know what to do with it. Therefore, hydrogen's perfect because we can store it all of a sudden. So I think electricity will be the main show. There will absolutely be other fuels in and around for specific use cases, I believe.
I think the other element, though, is the pace of technological change, though, is happening so quickly. There will be further evolutions in how efficient electricity is. There's going to have to be a lot of work done in the UK infrastructure, the charging infrastructure as well, and power production, because you've not only got potentially a draw on electric for movement for vehicles, you've got the draw on electricity from AI as well, which we are very much at the start of that journey. So there's a lot of things that need to be in place and a lot of jigsaw pieces that need to be put together to enable that electric future. So I think, I think my view is that there will be a combination of fuels that will be appropriate for that job.
Yeah.
Answer your question, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Just on the
It's a good question. It's not something we've considered. I think that will naturally come out of the haulier engagement that we are doing. So we run a number of haulier forums every year, and we understand what's on their minds and how we can support them, whether that's a case of, even getting to the point of lobbying government about certain things and working with the industry trade bodies. So yeah, it's not something we've actively considered at the moment, but certainly something that we'll be discussing with the hauliers as we go forward.
To your point earlier, though, Mike, I mean, that collaboration point is key. We've seen some really good examples of that out there, but they are still in pockets at the moment. So Nestle have done a collaboration with a co-op where Nestle wanted electric vehicles, but they couldn't complete the full loop, couldn't get back to home depot to recharge, and out on the road is unreliable and not necessarily enough power. So they installed some chargers at customer delivery point DCs. So whilst the vehicle's being unloaded or waiting to be unloaded, the guy can plug in, get 30, 45 minutes, and that gets him back. And that's a great example of a consumer company and a retailer collaborating to do a carbon delivery. And we need more of that type of thinking and behaviour, I think. Good. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, great. Appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much. Enjoy what's left. Hopefully not too much longer before you're on the road. Have a safe trip home, and hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you.